Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, where we take up important articles of the day from the newspaper and discuss them in detail as per the demands of Civil Services exam. Articles covered today are displayed on your screen and their notes in PDF and Word format are provided in the description box down below. Without further ado, let us begin. Starting off with the first article of the day, which appeared in Explain section of the Indian Express on 22nd of May. This article highlights of the price volatility in edible oils over the past 2-3 years because as per FAO's vegetable oil price index, it soared to an all-time high in the month of March 2022 due to Russian-Ukraine war. As the Russian-Ukraine war shut off their supplies through Black Sea ports, the price of sunflower oil in particular skyrocketed. Now, edible oils in general is important from UPSC point of view, which is apparent from the fact that UPSC in GS paper 3 has mentioned major crops, cropping patterns in various parts of the country. In the mains of the year 2018, UPSC asked a question related to cropping patterns of millets, whereas in the year 2017, UPSC asked us to state the major reasons for declining rice and wheat yield in the cropping system of India. Whereas in the prelims of the year 2020, a question appeared on cereal, pulses and oilseeds with respect to procurement at minimum support price or MSP. Hence, in the scope of today's discussion, we will cover about the news article first, which will highlight reasons for volatility in oil prices, following which we will take an overview of edible oilseed cultivation in India, followed by government measures that have been taken to make the country self-sufficient in oilseeds production. Moving forward, we will also discuss the challenges that the country faces in meeting the domestic demand of oilseeds. Then, we will conclude by suggesting a way forward for the same. Now, only few commodities have witnessed as much price volatility over 2-3 years as edible oils. As per UN's Food and Agriculture Organization's Global Vegetable Oil Index, it plunged to a low of 77.8 points in the month of May 2020, which was at the height of lockdown due to COVID restrictions. However, it soared to an all-time high of 251.8 points in the month of March 2022 following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Within the vegetable fat complex, the oil that has witnessed the highest price rise and fall in just last 1 year is sunflower. However, it is not surprising that Russia and Ukraine, both of which are parties of the war, account for nearly 58% of world's production of this oilseed in the year of 2021 and 22. And as the war shut off the supplies through Black Sea ports, the prices of sunflower have skyrocketed. However, this situation changed with Black Sea Grain Initiative, which was an agreement between Russia and Ukraine. This deal was brokered by UN and Turkey, and it facilitated safe navigation of vessels carrying grain and foodstuffs from 3 designated Ukraine ports. The opening of this corridor helped much of the sunflower oil, meal, and seed that had accumulated in Ukraine to be shipped out. This led to a cooling of prices of vegetable oil below even pre-war levels. Now, what is the status of edible oil demand and supply in India? First, let us take a look at the consumption. India consumes about 23.5 to 24 million tons of cooking oil annually, out of which about 13.5 to 14 million tons is imported, and the balance, that is about 10 million tons, is domestically cultivated. Thus, what the Indian consumer pays for edible oil is significantly determined by import prices. The palm oil is the largest consumed edible oil in the country, which is about 8 to 8.5 million tons. This is followed by soybean oil, which accounts for about 5 million tons. The third most used edible oil in the country is mustard, which is consumed about 3 to 3.5 million tons per year, followed by sunflower, which is consumed about 2 to 2.5 million tons per year. The other locally produced oil includes cottonseed oil, rice bran oil, groundnut oil, and coconut oil. However, these aren't big enough to influence prices.
Now, domestic output of mustard and soybean are close to 100 and 30% respectively, whereas production for both sunflower and palm oil is marginal. Thus, most of these oils are imported. Now, in the table to your right, you can see that India's edible oil import of about 8 million tons during the time period of November 2022 to April 23 saw a 22.3% increase over the corresponding 6 months of previous year. And at this present rate, total imports for this oil year, that is between November to October, may well surpass the record of 14.9 million tons of the year 2018 and 19. The import surge in the present has been led by palm and sunflower oil, and this have gained at the expense of soybean oil because the production of soybean oil in the country has fallen down. Now, as a result, the government of India has taken certain measures to increase the production of oilseeds in the country and make the country less import dependent. What are these measures? Let us have a look. The measures follow recommendation of two types of committees. The first, committee comprising of group of secretaries who have favored launching a nationwide oilseed mission, which is in order to minimize imports of edible oil, and in order to minimize imports, they suggest levy of cess on import of crude and refined edible oils. Whereas the Ashok Dalwai Committee recommends strategy for self-sufficiency through encompassing three sources of edible oil. These are primary, secondary, and tree-borne oils. Whereas it also favors incentivizing palm tree cultivation and price incentive to farmers through Edible Oil Development Fund or EODF. Also, as per Pradhan Mantri Annadata Aay Sanrakshan Abhiyan or PM Asha scheme, has started encouraging private sector procurement for oilseeds. The third important initiative by the government is the National Food Security Mission on Oilseeds, which has been implemented by Government of India from the financial year 2018-19. And this is done in order to augment the availability of edible oil and reduce the import burden by increasing the production and productivity of oilseeds. Oilseeds which are covered in the scheme include groundnut, soybean, rapeseed, mustard, sunflower, sesame, and castor, and area expansion of oil palm and tree-borne oilseeds in the country. This scheme comprises of three submissions, namely NFSM in oilseeds, NFSM in oil palm, and NFSM in tree-borne oilseeds. Under NFSM of oilseeds, Government of India has been implementing special programs, namely Special Program on Mustard for distribution of latest high-yielding variety seeds. It also includes distribution of seed mini kits of hybrid mustard seeds, rapid soybean seed multiplication plan, and a special project to increase area and production of sunflower cultivation in the country. In addition, the government has also improved an annual action plan for area expansion of sunflower in paddy fallows from the year 2022 to 23. This scheme is being implemented in 28 states and union territories, including all the districts in the state of Gujarat. Further, during the year 2021-22, a centrally sponsored scheme, namely National Mission on Edible Oil, that is oil palm, was launched by Government of India to promote oil palm cultivation in the country and make country Atmanirbhar in edible oil with special focus on Northeast and Andaman and Nicobar Islands. This will be done by increasing the area of oil palm to about 10 lakh hectares, and this scheme has been implemented in 15 states and union territories. Now let us take a holistic overview on National Mission on Edible Oil, that is oil palm. This mission will subsume the current National Food Security Mission on Oil Palm program, and it is proposed to cover an additional area of 6.5 lakh hectares for oil palm production till the year 2025-26 and thereby reaching the target of 10 lakh hectares ultimately. This scheme specially focuses on the areas of Northeast and Andaman and Nicobar Islands. This scheme aims to give price assurance to the oil palm farmers on the lines of minimum support price for fresh fruit bunches. From these bunches, the oil is extracted by the industry, and this support price assurance will be known as viability price. The assurance to the farmers will be in the form of viability gap funding, and the industry will be mandated to pay about 14.3% of crude palm oil price, and this will eventually go up to 15.3%. The sunset clause for this scheme is on 1st November of the year 2037, and the palm oil farmers will be paid the price difference via direct benefit transfer or DBT. And to give impetus to cultivation in Northeast and Andaman Nicobar Islands, the government will bear an additional 2% cost of CPO price. The assistance to the farmers for planting materials will be 29,000 per hectares, which is a steep increase for 12,000 rupees per hectare earlier. Further, substantial increase have been made in maintenance and intercropping intervention, where a special assistance of about rupees 250 per plant is being given to replant old gardens for rejuvenation. Also, the special assistance will be provided to Northeast and Andaman region, in which special provisions have been made for half-moon terrace cultivation, biofencing, and land clearance along with integrated farming. This assurance will inculcate confidence in Indian palm farmers to go for increased area and thereby more production of palm oil. The assistance to the farmers will also be rupees 1 crore for seed gardens of about 15 hectare in the Northeast and Andaman region and 80 lakhs for a 15 hectare plantation in rest of India. A financial outlay for more than 11,000 crore has been made for this scheme, out of which more than 8,800 crores will be paid by Government of India and states will pay a share of almost 2,200 crores. And this will include the viability gap funding also. Now, support by the government have some special significance. What are these significance? Let us have a look. The first significance of government support is that it will help reduce our country's import dependence for edible oil, as annual edible oil demand in the country is about 45 million tons and more than 50% of which is met by imports. Of total imports, palm oil accounts over 55% of imports, thus making India the largest importer of palm oil. Now, under the scheme of palm oil, the domestic production of crude palm oil is expected to go up to 11.2 lakh tons by the year 2025 and 26 and up to 28 lakh tons by 2029 and 30. And this will help reduce a significant chunk of import bill. The second significance of government support is that the palm oil enjoys a cost competitiveness over other vegetable oils. As palm oil have high yields, it is easy to cultivate and it bears fruit round the year. Hence, palm oil produces about 10 to 46 times more oil as compared to other oilseed crops and has a yield of around 4 tons of oil. The third significance is that India has a vast potential of cultivation of palm oil, that is, about 28 lakh hectares for palm oil production, out of which 9 lakh hectares is in northeast region of India. And at present, only 3.7 lakh hectares is under oil palm cultivation. The fourth significance is that it will help reduce food inflation in the economy. The price of oil palm has increased over 60% in the past year from 86 rupees kg to 138 rupees kg as of June 2021. Further, such government support have economic benefits as it will increase capital investment, generate employment, and increase farmers' income. The other significance of government support is that it will help in climate change management, as the crop has an appreciable level of carbon sequestration potential that makes the crop attractive with reference to climate change management. Also, increase in domestic oil production will help us meet global demand, as palm oil has emerged as a main global source of vegetable oil due to adequate availability, versatility in usage, and lower costs. However, despite government support, the production of oilseeds have certain challenges. What are these challenges? Let us take a look. The challenges in meeting the domestic demand includes first that there is a stagnation in oilseed production in the country, as it has stagnated to about 33 million tons per year over the last 5 years, and this is due to low remuneration for farmers and reduction in area of cultivation. The second challenge that it faces is that food processing industry in India prefers import refined oil for blending purposes, thus have made our edible oil industry import dependent. The third challenge is that the oilseed cultivation in India is primarily rain fed, as over 70% of the area used for oilseed cultivation comes under rain fed cultivation, and hence the yield is dependent on monsoon. The fourth challenge is that the small and medium farmers have lack of resources, that are non availability of quality seeds, that leads to low yield in production of oil seeds. The fifth challenge is that there is no cohesive policy to liquidate the existing stock of procurement of oil seeds. The sixth challenge pertains to palm oil. First is that India is not an ideal geographic location, that it does not come under 8 degrees latitude. The second challenge is that cultivation of oil palm leads to substantial deforestation and has potential loss of rainforest cover. The third challenge is that it negatively impacts biodiversity and soil condition, as palm is an invasive species. Also, cultivation of palm oil requires larger footprint, as palm tree requires about 200 to 300 liters per day. Further, cultivation of palm oil faces long gestation period of about 3 to 4 years before the tree starts yielding the fruit. Also, the small farm holdings makes investment in plantation style cropping a challenging affair. However, there are certain suggestions that can be included to increase the cultivation of oilseeds in our country. The first suggestion is that we need to diversify our current cropping pattern in order to grow oilseeds on underutilized farming locations. Further, there's a need to bring cultivation of oilseeds under the ambit of public distribution system. This will increase the procurement by state agencies. Further, there is a need to give impetus to domestic varieties. This can be done by linking the import tariff with domestic MSP and refining cost. The fourth suggestion is to improve the availability of resources to farmers. This can be done by increasing the availability of quality seeds, bridging the awareness gaps regarding better techniques, developing supportive infrastructure, and ensuring efficiently managed markets for better price discovery. Further, to increase oil palm production, we also need to eliminate incentives for oil palm production that leads to destruction of forests. Man-made oil palm plantation should not be included in the definition of forest, especially if they are going to replace the forest cover, because they cannot support same level of biodiversity. Also, by encouraging the companies to use sustainable palm oil in response to international criticism, various certification of schemes have been set up in recent years by the palm oil industry. Now, as we have discussed, there is a need to increase the production of oil seeds in India. and palm oil offers a viable alternative for the same. Now, moving on to the second article of the day, which appeared in the Indian Express Explain section on 25th of May. This article reports that India adopted doing business indicators as core component of its reform strategies. The Doing Business project was launched in the year 2002 and it provided objective measures of business regulations and their enforcement across 191 economies and selected cities at subnational and regional level. This indicator looks at domestic, small and medium sized companies and measures the regulations applying to them throughout their life cycle. The Ease of Doing Business ranking was established by the World Bank Group, wherein the higher rankings or a lower numerical value indicate better and usually simpler regulations for businesses and stronger protections of property rights. India's position in the ranking has improved to 63rd position from 142nd in 2014 on Ease of Doing Business ranking for the year 2020. Now, the importance of this topic can be gauged by the fact that UPSC in Mains GS Paper 3 states Indian economy and issues related to planning, mobilization of resources, growth, development and employment. While in the previous year question in Mains 2021 in GS Paper 3, the question appeared on investment in infrastructure and why is it essential for a more rapid and inclusive economic growth. While in the year 2020, a question appeared on meaning of investment and asked us to discuss the factors that were to be considered while designing a concession agreement between a public entity and a private entity. On similar lines, in prelims of the year 2016, a question directly appeared on the same topic, that is, which of the following body declares ease of doing business rankings. Hence, in the scope of today's discussion, we will first take a look so as to why ease of doing business is needed. Then, we will proceed to take a look on ease of doing business reforms undertaken by India. This will be followed by discussion of issues that pertains to ease of doing business ranking by the World Bank. Then we will discuss challenges that affect ease of doing business in India before reaching to a conclusion. Now, why is ease of doing business needed for a particular economy? Various experts are supportive of the idea that there is an important and robust relationship between the business regulatory environment and economic outcomes. Regulatory environment for business, it affects productivity, growth, employment, trade, investment, access to finance, and the size of informal economy. Whereas the second reason for why ease of doing business is needed, as ease of doing business points to transparent rules on the ground which promotes efficient markets, revs up enterprises and boosts the development delivery mechanism. Therefore, it helps change perceptions and investor sentiments. The third reason is that regulatory burden on a business has a significant impact on its performance. To ensure compliance, regulations impose both time and cost and it affects competitiveness of a business. Thus, a low regulatory burden means that entrepreneurs will devote more of their time to productive activities, hence improving the business productivity. The fourth reason is that Niti Aayog came out with a state level ease of doing business ranking. It is based on the progress of states in completing annual reform action plan. This state level ranking will help attract investment, will foster healthy competition and increase ease of doing businesses in each of their states. Now, let us take a look on some of ease of doing business reforms that are implemented by India to improve its ranking. The first measure that was taken is launching the Make in India program. This led to reforms in getting foreign direct investment, fostering businesses, and alleviating the business environment from outdated policies and regulations to infrastructure development, etc. The second reform were introduced by launching of online platforms such as Spice Plus and Agile Proform, which enabled new company incorporation in 3 steps as compared to a 14-step process back in the year 2014. The third reform was establishment of a modern insolvency regime through Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code of the year 2016, which is a part of comprehensive strategy to reform corporate law. Fourth is by introducing the GST regime, the government has enabled filing of easy GST returns and has eliminated incorporation fees for small businesses, etc. The fifth reform was reducing the number of days required to get an electricity connection from 105 days in 2014 to 53 days in 2019 in India. The sixth reform was the establishment of dedicated commercial courts with modern facilities in cities of Delhi and Mumbai that have been established for easy redressal of commercial disputes. Another reform was introduction of single window clearances for all import and export transactions, integration of all stakeholders such as port and terminal operators at a common platform, and fast tracking of clearances of consignments at every ports. Further, passage of Taxation Laws Amendment Act of the year 2021, it scrapped the retrospective taxation, thereby bringing certainty in taxation laws. Now, what are the issues that affect ease of doing business rankings? The first issue that these rankings have a questionable impact. It could be argued that these rankings do not capture the broader reality in many countries, and that they could have been easily gamed by the governments in order to rise up the rankings. For instance, India's ranking were based on data from just two cities, that are Delhi and Mumbai. It was plain to most observers that just a few kilometers away from border of these cities, doing business was considerably tougher. The second issue is that such rankings have a negative effect on the GDP of a country. A new research paper that was titled Did Raising Doing Business Scores Boost GDP, which was published by Journal of Comparative Economies, it provided a result that ran contrary to the conventional thinking about these rankings and their impact on the economy. In this research paper, the author found that when a country rose in doing business rankings, it was accompanied by a negative impact on its GDP. Further, they do not find much evidence of a positive effect in the years after these improvements have happened. The third issue is that there are irregularities in the ranking system. The decision to discontinue this ranking came after a review of data irregularities that were found in 2018 and 2020 reports. These irregularities primarily affected four countries, that is China, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and Azerbaijan. The fourth issue with this ranking is that it suffers from libertarian bias, that this ranking tends to reduce the complexity of economic activity to a few quantifiable metrics. It creates an incentive for countries to pursue economic policies that conforms with World Bank vision of economic development, and it is pro-market that eliminates regulation and barriers to investment, pushes market-friendly reforms, and reduces labor protections, etc. The fifth issue is that these rankings ignore deeper structural, social, or political issues, and these rankings have been criticized for gaming the system rather than pushing for real and lasting structural reforms. Further, this ranking subscribes to a one size fits all approach. That is, by measuring and understanding economic growth and development, especially one based on ideological priors of an institution and stakeholders, this ranking is always likely to have certain fatal flaws. Now, what are challenges to ease of doing businesses in India? This will be discussed in the next slide. The first challenge to ease of doing business in India is that our country lags on critical parameters. Though progress have been made, India still lags behind many larger nations in critical metrics such as starting a business, enforcing contracts, and registering a property. The second challenge is that India has high tariffs and protectionist policies. India's tariff and trade regulations were already non transparent and are often unpredictable, which leaves many investors and exporters with limited access to the market. India's average applied tariff is one among the highest bound tariff rates in the World Trade Organization. The third challenge is that there's an unstable policy environment in the country. A good example of the recent past is the telecom sector, which saw huge enthusiastic entries of large multinational corporations when this sector was opened up for foreign direct investment. However, soon enough, many of these corporations exited the country thanks to ever changing policy framework. The fourth challenge is that the country has an inadequate infrastructure, as India's infrastructure presents challenges to its growing economic status and the ability to deliver public services. The fifth and probably the most important challenge that ease of doing business in India faces is safeguarding of intellectual property. Although local laws are thorough and generally compatible with Europe and US IP laws, there are some concerns about enforcement of these laws. Because of bureaucratic delay and a general lack of transparency, these areas are concerned in terms of protecting sensitive intellectual assets. Although between 2002, when these rankings were started, and in 2018, when serious allegations first emerged, the ease of doing business rankings have become more and more influential with each passing year. They have become a go to metric for global investors, and a move up in these rankings could lead to international investors suddenly pouring billions of dollars into an economy, while a move down will trigger a backlash. Hence, our improvement in these indicators are impressive. However, country still is below its competitors. Now, as these rankings are about to be publishing again, reforms in starting a business, enforcing contracts, and registering a property has suddenly become an economic imperative. Now, moving on to the last article of the day, which appeared in the Explain section of the Indian Express on 24th of May. Last month, an annual report by the UN Population Fund revealed that India is all set to become the world's most populous country by the middle of this year. It is estimated that India's population would be 142.8 crores, and by that time it will be slightly ahead of China's population of 142.5 crores. The 2021 census had to be postponed because of the COVID pandemic, and it was the first time in the 150-year history of India's census operations that the exercise was not completed on time. Curiously, the census has been pending even after the end of pandemic and the restoration of normalcy. And as of now, there is no clarity on the timeline. The enumeration work, that is, the actual counting of people, had traditionally been done in the February of the census year. And if the same practice is to be followed, the earliest it can now be done is by February next year. Now, what is the importance of this topic? As census is important because of social, political, and economic implications, especially in GS Paper 1, population and its associated issue is a key area of interest for UPSC, whereas in GS Paper 2, functions and responsibilities of both union and state governments have been asked. Whereas in GS Paper 3, Indian economy and issues related to mobilization of resources is important, and population is a key resource for economic development of the country. The importance can also be gauged by the fact that UPSC in GS Paper 1 has asked us to critically examine whether growing population is cause of poverty or poverty is the main cause of population increase in India. Whereas in the previous year question of 2015, we were asked to examine about the demographic dividend of the country. Whereas in the prelims of the year 2011, a question directly appeared on demographic dividend, which means India has a high population in the age group of 15 to 64 years. Hence, in the scope of today's discussion, we will first cover whether exercise of census is a constitutional or a legal mandate to the government, and Further, we will also discuss about the Census Act of the year 1948 and the authorities involved in the process of census. Then, we will discuss the importance of census, followed by the challenges that are faced in conducting of such exercises, and after that, we will conclude our discussion. Now, the 10-year cycle of census, is it a constitutional or just a legal mandate? Let's find out. A census is a constitutionally mandated exercise in India. There are repeated references to the census exercise in the constitution which are given in context of reorganization of constituencies for both parliament and state assemblies. But the Constitution of India does not say when the census has to be carried out or what the frequency of this exercise should be. In that reference, Census of India Act of 1948, it provides the legal framework for carrying out the census. However, this act also does not mention the timing or the periodicity of census. Therefore, there is no constitutional or legal requirement that a census has to be done every 10 years. However, this exercise has been carried out in the first year of every decade without fail since 1881. Most of the other countries also follow the 10-year cycle for their census. However, there are countries like Australia that do it every 5 years. Although the Census of India is a major administrative function, the census organization was set up on an ad hoc basis for each census till the census of 1951. However, the Census of India Act, which was enacted in 1948, then provided the permanent scheme for conducting population census with duties and responsibilities of census officers. This act also make it obligatory or the part of every citizen to answer the census question truthfully, and it also penalizes for giving false information. One of the most important provision of Census Act of 1948 is that it makes provision for maintenance of secrecy of the information that are collected at the time of census, and all information that are collected under the census is confidential and is not to be shared with any other agency, be it government or private. Now, let us take a look at the authorities that are involved in the exercise. The Government of India, in the month of May 1949, decided to initiate steps for developing the systematic collection of statistics on the size of population, its growth, etc. For this purpose, it established an organization, that is, Office of Registrar General and Census Commissioner under the Ministry of Home Affairs, which is responsible for conducting this once in a 10-year exercise. Later, this office became entrusted with the responsibility of implementation of Registration of Births and Deaths Act of the year 1969. As there is a no legal requirement, but census has been a permanent exercise. Why is it so? It is because of the utility of data that are being collected. The census, it produces primary and authentic data that becomes a backbone of every statistical enterprise, which informs all planning, administrative, and economic decision making processes. The data of the census forms the basis of every social, economic, and political indicator. Now, what are the reasons for conducting of population census exercises? Let us take a look. The first reason for conducting of census is that it aids in policy and planning. Census data provides vital information for the governments and policymakers to make informed decisions and develop effective plans. It helps in determining the allocation of resources such as healthcare, education, infrastructure, and social welfare programs based on population needs. Census data assists in identifying demographic trends, population distribution, and changes in population size over time, which guides the policy formulation and implementation. The second important reason is that it helps in resource allocation. The census data helps in fair distribution of resources. It provides accurate population counts and demographic information, which enables the government to allocate funds and services equitably across different regions and communities. By understanding the population characteristics, Government can identify areas with specific needs and allocate resources accordingly. The third important reason is that it aids in infrastructure development. Census data aids in infrastructure planning and development. It provides insights into population density, migration patterns, and urbanization trends, which helps in determining where the new infrastructure, such as roads, schools, hospitals, and utilities, should be built. It also assists in efficient urban planning and ensures that infrastructure projects are aligned with the population's requirement. The fourth important reason is that it helps in economic analysis. Census data plays a crucial role in economic analysis and decision making. It provides information on employment, occupation, income levels, and other socioeconomic indicators. Governments, businesses, researchers, and policymakers utilize this data to analyze market trends, assess labor force needs, and identify potential investment opportunities to develop economic policies. The fifth reason is that it helps in social research and demographic studies. Census data serves as a valuable resource for social research and demographic studies. Researchers and analysts utilize this data to study population dynamics, social inequalities, migration patterns, family structures, and other demographic characteristics. It helps in understanding social changes, tracking population trends, and formulating social policies. The sixth is it helps determining fair electoral representation. Census data is utilized for determining electoral boundaries and ensuring a fair political representation. It provides information on population distribution, thereby allowing governments to redraw electoral districts, which ensures that each district has roughly equal population. This process helps maintaining democratic principles by ensuring that each citizen's vote carries equal weight. The last and probably the most important reason for conducting census is that it aids in monitoring progress and evaluation of policies. Census data provides a baseline for monitoring progress and evaluating the effectiveness of policies and programs. By conducting periodic censuses, government can compare population data over time and assess the impact of various interventions. It enables the policymakers to identify areas where policies have been successful and areas that require further attention. Overall, population census are crucial for informed decision making, equitable resource allocation, policy formulation, and monitoring social changes. They provide a comprehensive understanding of the population, thereby facilitating better governance, planning, and development for benefit of society as a whole. However, conducting the exercise of census faces several challenges. What are these challenges? Let us take a look. The first challenge is that enormous financial cost of conducting the exercise poses one of the biggest challenges associated with census in poor countries. Conducting a census is widely known to be extremely costly. The second obstacle in conducting census in countries with high literacy rates presents a significant obstacle. These nations struggle with large proportions of their population being illiterates, thus making the census process more challenging. Third is that poor infrastructure facilities in certain areas make it difficult to undertake an efficient population census. Inaccessible or insufficient roads that connect various towns and villages creates hurdle for conducting of this exercise. Further, census officers encounter serious challenges in underdeveloped parts of the world where traditional and religious beliefs prevail. Traditional beliefs often interferes with the counting process when officers reach these areas. Another challenge is corruption, which adds another layer of complexity to the census process. When corruption occurs during census activities, it becomes difficult to achieve an efficient and accurate population count. Another challenge is that there are shortage of experts. Certain parts of the world suffers from shortage of census experts. the insufficient number of professionals which have the necessary knowledge and experience of conducting a census poses a problem for conducting censuses in these regions. The last challenge is that there are unreliable demographic maps, which makes it challenging for the authorities to identify and reach all remote areas, especially very remote regions of the country, for conducting the census exercise. To conclude, population census holds immense importance as a constitutional and administrative function in India. Although it is not legally required to be conducted every 10 years, the census has been consistently carried out since the year 1881 and thereby providing primary and authentic data that serves as a foundation for various statistical endeavors. The census data provides a vital role in policy planning, policy making, resource allocation, infrastructure development, economic analysis, social research, electoral representation, and monitoring progress and evaluating policies. By understanding demographic trends and population characteristics, government can make informed decisions and address the needs of different regions and communities. However, conduct of census in India faces significant challenges, which includes financial constraint, high literacy rate, inadequate infrastructure, traditional beliefs, corruption, shortage of experts, insufficient educational campaigns, and unreliable demographic maps. Overcoming these challenges is crucial to ensure accurate and reliable data, which forms the basis of effective governance, planning, and development for the betterment of society as a whole.